You are listening to the Profiles in Leadership podcast with Steve Anderson, sponsored by VGM Advantage. This is Season 1, Episode 7. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today we will be speaking with Jim Glinn about the future of physical therapy and private practice. James Glinn is the founder of the Movement for Life team. As part of an amazing group of owners and dedicated team of experts, Dr. Glinn contributes to the operations of the largest employee-owned fitness, wellness, and outpatient rehabilitation team in the United States. In addition, James is passionate about telemovement, a nationwide wellness and physical therapy-directed telehealth network. James has served on the board of directors for the private practice section of the American Physical Therapy Association, as well as serving on the APTA Advisory Board on Reimbursement and the liaison to the Payment Policy Committee of the private practice section of APTA. Passionate about the advancement of private practice, Dr. Glinn was a formative member and current vice chair of the Physical Therapy Business Alliance. When not striving to improve the lives of those he serves, James, a former All-American swimmer, enjoys surfing, paddling, and other water sports, as well as spending time with his wife and daughters. Hi, Jim. It's great to have you on the program today. Thanks for offering to be a guest for the Profiles of Leadership podcast.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with just a little bit of your journey where, I know that you had a father that was in physical therapy, so I'm sure that's how you got some exposure to it. But how do you get from being in college and to PT school and start this business? And we'll talk a little bit more of that as we go. So why don't you just fill us in on that?
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess I have to start with my father. I am forever indebted. My father, a physical therapist, and he would want me to say USC graduate. So fight on to all the USC graduates out there.
There you go.
I grew up around physical therapy. So I folded gowns in my dad's clinic when I was 7 or 8 for a nickel a gown, and probably back when they used cloth gowns in PT clinics.
Yeah.
And so, it sort of showed that I had, sort of embedded in me an entrepreneurial spirit because, that nickel a gown, I knew if I could get 20 of those, that there was a monetary reward. And if I worked hard, there was more reward, and I could, go buy whatever an 11 or 8-year-old would buy with, a couple bucks here and there. So I was always around physical therapy clinics. I'd been around first the hospital environment because my dad started in a hospital, built a real nice outpatient department, and then he had transitioned into private practice in 1980. And so, in 1980, I was 10 years old. So I grew up through some real formative times in PT, and then I got to see, right as I was in college, this shift towards managed care. The first round with the Hillary Clinton, and some of Hillary Care concepts, and the aftermath of what happened in the private world, and so I saw a lot of that, and had always been an absolute fanatic about fitness and sports. Being the son of a physical therapist, it's hard not to have some of those. And if anyone knows my father, it's even harder.
I knew your father. Yes.
Yeah, so he's a zealot as far as fitness and movement goes. Maybe if it's possible to do it to a fault, he's tried. And so I was always around the sports, and I was a collegiate swimmer, and I was swimming at a pretty high level, and it was an Olympic year, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life because I knew I couldn't swim forever. And so I was at NC2A swimming championships in an Olympic year, and I had already sent some letters of interest to some different PT schools as one option. I wasn't sure if PT maybe, there's always that. I mean, you may be able to relate as well as anyone. There's always that, my dad was a PT, and so there's always that struggle of there's a benefit to it, but there's also, I don't know, I think as a young man, you want to kind of show the world that you can do your thing too.
Exactly,
and so.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I thankfully my dad gave me that opportunity to do that, but at the time I wasn't sure, so I'd apply to these PT schools, and I honestly, it's a tough decision. I didn't know how to make the decision, and so I just figured I'd base it on my athletic performance. And so I told myself, if I make Olympic trials, then it was my third year in college as a junior in undergrad. I'm gonna keep going, and I'm gonna go to Olympic trials, and I'm gonna dedicate to this. And if I don't make it Olympic trials, I'm gonna really dig into this opportunity to look at physical therapy school as an option. And I guess since we're talking, I swam horrible that time. I missed Olympic. I shouldn't say I swam horrible. I missed my goal. I didn't make Olympic trials. Missed it by a little bit. And when you look back on things, you realize sometimes things, you're fortunate when they happen certain ways, as devastating as they may be at the time. And so I went off to PT school and went and got my master's at Loma Linda University. Just absolutely loved the medical campus vibe that was there. It's all at the medical center there at Loma Linda, California. They were doing the infant heart transplants at the time. They're just what I thought was cutting edge things. At PT school at the time was just a really exciting thing for me, like it is for a lot of students now. Just learning about trying to always move better and swim faster and do things, and then learning more about the depth of where that could go. Yeah. And then from there, learning about how you could serve other people with some of that knowledge that you have. And so, I went through PT school and finished my master's. I think, like a lot of us, the day before they all went to the doctorate. So, there I was with my master's degree. And then from there, went back and did my doctorate with Stanley at University of St. Augustine, Stanley Paris. Right. And can't say enough amazing things about Stanley and his wife, Dr. Patla.
Yeah, they're amazing people. They're amazing people.
Truly amazing on so many levels. And learned a ton from them. And went out into the world and as a physical therapist and went back and started to work with my father. So that was sort of where I landed right out of PT school and landed right into the mid-'90s, which was an exciting time with capitation and new treatment models and whatnot.
Yeah, well, that's an amazing story. I had no idea those long arms and legs that you had were out there in the pool close to the Olympic trials. That's a great story. So you didn't become the next Michael Phelps, but you just became the next Glinn of physical therapy. So that's awesome.
Exactly.
So how did you get to San Luis Obispo? Because I know that's where where you live now. So because you kind of grew up in Central California, right? To kind of the farm country of California, so to speak.
Absolutely. I spent a lot of time in farm fields. I'm a proud born and raised in Bakersfield, California, and then also was able to, Bakersfield, as a lot of people say, is a great place to be from. And so perfect-sized town, 70,000, 80,000 people when I was in high school, and then, really just boomed after that between agriculture and oil and now all sorts of other things. And so I'd worked for my dad in Bakersfield for a little while, and my dad had then sold his practice to his partners. He and I can't remember the year, it must have been around 2000 or so. He had sold his practice to his partners, and actually it was 98 or so, because I thereafter worked with his partners for a little bit and tried to see what my role would be with this organization my dad and his fellow colleagues had built, and we just didn't find a good fit for some of the things. In hindsight, I look back, I was an awful, and still can be. I can be awful stubborn and pushy when I have a vision or something that I want to see, and so then when you're on the other side of the table and people are bringing things, do you realize how difficult you may have made it for people, and maybe other ways you could have approached it, but. Nonetheless, I learned a ton, obviously, from my dad in that practice. I took a lot of those things. And so from there, I ultimately, in the negotiation, oftentimes when I was negotiating for things that I thought should happen when I was at that practice in Bakersfield, my dad had moved on then, and so these were the remaining partners. I had some ideas, and they just weren't interested in some of those ideas, and they still run a fantastic practice. So what I did was I left, and I took an interim job in Lone Pine, California, where I was director of rehabilitation at a very small rural hospital. Did that for a little while, and then there was a small practice for sale in San Luis Obispo. And somewhere in there, life came around, and I fell in love with my wife, still wife, Shannon Glinn, and she came over to Lone Pine with me, and she said, "We're not staying here forever." She said,
Yeah.
This is a beautiful place to backpack, but I love you a lot, but I definitely have some limits." So. This is, let's see, we're back in late 98. And late 98 in California, the California chapter of the American Physical Therapy Association had this kind of paper rag that they would send out every month that was I think it was called Interventions. And on the back, it would have different practices for sale. And it'd have a little code to tell you if it was physician-owned or who PT-owned. Well, interestingly, there was a practice owned by a guy named Lee Forsyth, and Lee had been in San Luis Obispo, believe it or not, since 1959.
Wow!
And there's some really neat. I mean, if we had 3 or 4 hours, there's some neat stories where Carl DeRosa had come out and interviewed with Lee, and ended up, I think, at UC Davis. And so there's some really, it's interesting how small the PT world really is.
Yeah, no kidding.
And so anyway, I looked at this thing. I looked at my wife, and she had gone to college in San Luis Obispo just for a little while. She had she went there for 2 or 3 quarters, and then finished up back at San Diego State where she had started. And she said San Luis Obispo is beautiful. I didn't really know the area real well, but it's just a fantastic area. So we went and checked it out, and I remember. The practice was, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, was for sale because Lee Forsyth, rest his soul, had passed away. He'd run that great practice for years, and his wife had the practice, and so she, I'm indebted to her. She was willing to work with me. She let me scrape together. I think I scraped together like 25 or 30 grand, and it was between, hey, mom and dad, can I borrow $5,000? I put some on a credit card deal. I really wanted to do it myself. I wanted to figure, and so she gave me the loan, and so I bought the practice for 120 grand from her, 30 down, and the rest over 5 years. She gave me a great deal on the lease. Sweetest lady, buzz around like a bee. I haven't seen her in 5 or 10 years, but I bet she's still buzzing around. Really neat lady. And so started that practice and opened those doors on January 4th, 1999, scared to death.
Oh, that's such a great story. And San Luis Obispo is a beautiful town. I remember coming to visit you one time, just flying along the coastline there in the plane from, you come out of San Francisco and then you head south along the coastline and flying in and just seeing that town up against the valley and the water. It's a beautiful place. So,
we're super fortunate here.
Yeah, it's a great community. So fill us in a little bit. I think our listeners would like to hear how you structured that company, and I believe it's eventually went to an ESOP. And so just tell us how you have amazing people. I know a lot of people in that company that are your partners now, and just tell us about the structure of how you went from one small clinic that you bought for $120,000 to the business that you have today.
Yeah, originally, like I said, I opened this practice in January of '99, scared to death, but pretty cocky. I mean, the older I get, the less cocky I get. But at the time, I'd come from this practice. My dad, you don't realize how much work practice owners put into something until you actually do it and you're part of it.
Absolutely.
And I was just the young new PT that had tons of evaluations and great orthopedic patients and this wonderful learning environment to grow clinically and develop that way, and just fun. Just really a fun learning great place to cut your teeth, and to learn all those things. And so I start this practice, and I didn't know that. I just assumed that hey everybody, Jim Glinn is here, and so they're all going to come rushing to the door for physical therapy, right? Because I'm so great. And I remember the first 3 or 4 weeks I sat there, and literally nothing happened. I mean, there was 1 or 2 patients that came by because they had been there before. But I think I had 2 or 3 patients a day that were left over from the practice from before. And so, pretty depressing time. I remember about 3 or 4 months into it, laying in bed with my wife, who I, had talked into all this whole thing. And although I kind of blamed her because I had a decent gig over in Lone Pine. So you got to always pass a little blame. And then a buddy of mine, back to the swimming thing, a guy named Todd Newman, who I think you've met, Todd.
Yeah, I know.
Todd said, "Hey, you're stupid, man. No one knows you're here. No one's gonna come. You know, you have all this. You're such a bright guy. You did all this education, and I think you're great at what you do. But if you don't tell anybody, no one's gonna. They're not gonna magically find out about you. And so he said, how about we do this deal where I help you go out and tell the world how great you are, and in the clinic you do a great job. You do a great job. You help these patients. Along the path, the movement continuum, get them better, create a relationship with them, engage them. And we did that. And I'll tell you, Steve, with 2 or 3 weeks into going out and telling the world we were there, patients started. We started seeing patients, and then myself, my wife worked at the front desk, and we worked really, really hard for months and months, and we started to grow. And one of the things, and I know you worked real close with Scott Wick forever, and so that these really talented people that are great at building relationships and moving things forward, they're always looking for new things. So Todd says to me, hey, this is great that you've got this one thing going, but I found this opportunity where we could add a second clinic, and I thought, man, I don't know if I could do that, but I was always opportunistic. So let's see what we can do. I think my care is really good, and so we could help these communities. And so we opened a second location, which involved me driving back and forth, and it was like 14 or 15 miles away, and so I'm driving back and forth. And a few months into that, I realized I'm doing a lousy job. I'm doing a lousy job because I'm spending time in the car. I'm not eating lunch. I'm running back and forth. And so I decided we got to hire somebody, right? I've got to find somebody else that can help out. And so I got to figure out how to build a team now. Mm-hmm. And so we went out and started thinking about what's this going to look like when we build a team. And so everyone says, tell me about this model that you have and then that you put together. Honestly, see, I just didn't want to babysit anybody. I really feel, and I still believe this, that doctorally trained PTs are really, really bright, amazing people that don't need to have babysitters and then a bunch of rules and regulations around them in order to do great work. And so we tried to create that environment where there were clear expectations and some meaningful rewards and shared profit. And that was really the basic model, and we grew from that second location. And don't misunderstand. We had some great luck. We had the Balanced Budget Act, where everybody left all the right in 99, 2000. Everyone left all the nursing homes, and so there was a ton of PTs available. And I'll take luck and timing any day over the hard work when I can get it. Combine the two, and it works really great. And so we took this model that basically, and we still use it today, where we want to make people successful. So we want people that want to run a location or a clinic. We call them directors. Again, I'm not the most creative guy, but we pay them a low base pay, which originally was $30,000. It still is the same number, and we've had to adjust it for employment law. Employment law sometimes doesn't want you to share risk as much as we like to share risk and reward with our team.
Right.
So we've had to move up their base pay to meet some of the exemptions and whatnot. And so we pay them a very low base pay, and then we share everything. We share everything after that. And so we grew that to 20 plus clinics over a period of 15 or so years. And then in 2015, after exploring a whole bunch of different succession plans and talking with a bunch of really bright people about what might be possible, including yourself, we found this concept of using an employee stock ownership plan, which allowed us to have a sustainable process where we could keep all of our communities, keep serving all of our communities exactly the same way that we were, and that we could give equity to our team so that everyone on our team has equity as an employee owner, and that when we deliver this care, we deliver it as a true team, a team of owners that are sharing equity. And like anything I've gotten involved with, as I learn more about ownership and building teams and what's possible, I really believe that the ESOP path, while it's not for everybody, is truly an elegant solution. And in some ways, I think can really help with some of the poverty issues that we have. I think equity is a great way to help people understand that they're part of something, but also a great way for them to have a successful future and be able to see some of their dreams as well.
Yeah, and I think that's what people want. They want to be part of something. They want to be involved, to give their best effort for a good return, and I just think that's human nature. You really rocked leadership lesson number 1, which is surround yourself with the right people and then let them do their jobs. Let them do things that can help you. So it's pretty impressive.
No, I think to that point, Steve. One thing I've always said is think about how you'd act in the world if you knew the people on your team were smarter than you and cared more than you do. And when you get on big teams, we've got 400 or 500 people on our team now. There's no way that I can be the smartest on that team and that I care more than everybody else in that team. There's just no way. So like you said, you've got to let them go be brilliant, and you've got to let them go do the things that they're amazing at, and they will surprise you all the time, both good and bad.
How do you react to those? They'll say, "Oh, geez, Jim, that's a great story, but if you just would have kept it to yourself or just a few people, think how much money you would have, and now you could sell it for this huge amount of money. And isn't that capitalistic America? And isn't that the way to go?"
Yeah, it's a great question, and I've thought about that question a lot because I've had people tell me that I was a fool. That the money guys, you left chips on the table and you did this. I don't know. I guess for me, there's a point on the money part where there isn't enough, and that there are things bigger than that. And I really, really do believe, and I've spent a lot of time right now with our public health departments and with community foundations, trying to make our communities better. And I really believe it occurs very locally, and I believe that physical therapy is a really big part of that. And so I feel like I've got bigger aspirations for our team than the financial part. Now that said, I don't want to forget the fact that to get there, I think we do need to have reasonable profit. But I think healthcare, and I appreciate the capitalism piece, and I have some very capitalistic bents. I mean, I can share a lot of other businesses that I've been in. I think healthcare and education are different, Steve. I think there's a level of servitude that has a greater level of responsibility, and sometimes I feel when we get too capitalistic about it, and I know that's a nebulous way to say it, that we really cheapen what's possible and what we could achieve.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a long-winded answer to I think we can. The money's important, but we can and we need to, as a profession, achieve more.
Well, I think you said some really interesting things there about healthcare being a different type of business, and then I was also intrigued by your answer about how you feel that by sharing some of that wealth or sharing some of what you do and giving people a piece of the pie, it helps our communities. It helps with, as you said, even poverty, to give people something to work hard for and feel like they're going to get some kind of return on their hard work and efforts.
Yeah, no. Well, and that return, like you see, like we talked, it comes about in dollar amounts. But I mean, you and I both know there is, at least for me, there's no better reward, there's no better drug than the hug from a patient that you helped, than the person that gives you a genuine look in your eye and says that look of gratitude. I mean, you can't see me, but I have goosebumps right now. Those you can't replicate those with money, and man's tried forever to do it and continue to fail. So,
so true.
Don't miss it. There's fun stuff in it, right? It's powerful.
Yeah. Well, we all know people with a lot of money that are really unhappy. So tell me a little bit about now the structure that you created, and you have this team and you have partners and the ESOP and whatever. I think I would guess to say, from what I know a little bit, is that it's afforded you to do some things that you want to do other than just be the CEO of a company and put in 80 or 90 hours a week. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing and how that structure and your success has allowed you to do some other things.
Yeah, so one of the things I realized is I think a lot of times when we have things that go along a path, that sometimes things, and I guess it's an exciting thing, although it's challenging to deal with, is this concept of growing beyond yourself. And our team just really grew beyond some of my skill sets largely in terms of a lot of the transactional things. These things get really big, and so surrounding yourself with people that are good at handling those things has really afforded me the ability to figure out, and I'm always working on it, but to figure out, kind of where I can bring value and the things that I do well. And one of those, I think, is strategy. So I still hold the role with our team. I'm still one of our Movement for Life employee owners, and I assist on a daily basis with strategy, consulting and advising our team and helping them with those pieces, and trying to make sure that we can maintain some of our history. History is important. I mean, you know that as well as anybody. History is important. And so, the values that we've shared and the culture that's been created from that, I still spend a lot of time doing that. as I've been able to dig deeper into building teams and what's possible, reading and studying, I've had some more time in the last several years to really take a deeper look at how we build teams and how humans are motivated and how we can all best perform. And so that's where I've put a lot of my time lately. The biggest project that I'm working on right now is looking at how more people can access the services that we provide. And using new tools, using the internet. We've got our telemovement platform where we're working with JOSPT, and we're trying to bring, what we consider our profession's best clinical guidelines out into the world that doesn't have it now, and then partner with other clinics, tons of them across the nation, and get their good interest and good works into a network where, again, it's a shared process and we're all working together to have these things out there. And so, it's such a huge project. I'm sure you can probably experience this, Steve. You work with a team of a certain size, and it can be a fairly smooth, fluid process. But the bigger and the more variables that you get, and the more complex things get, the more interesting it becomes, and the more fun I think the challenge becomes to see. Because the possibilities are so immense. But boy, the frustrations and getting all the pieces in place can be a real challenge. And so I've really just enjoyed that process. I'm amazed by where we've gotten that platform now and what we're able to do with that in terms of what's possible for physical therapy into the future. It's not going to be the only thing that's out there. There'll be tons of different ideas just like this. But just how much better we're getting at some of the things that really matter as a profession in terms of if you think back, Steve, to when I first finished PT school, and even just some of the clinical paradigms in place and how they're delivered to what's possible now. And so, I couldn't be more excited about that opportunity to work on all that.
Well, I think what's so refreshing about your answers and just hearing you talk is you're using words over and over again, like sharing and partnerships and partnering with people and realizing you can't do it all yourself, and that by working with other people and sharing your knowledge and to me that's what I think is so fun and refreshing. But on the other hand, I don't think we as a profession are very good at it. We don't do it very good. I think too many of us look at it and try and say, oh, we need to keep this here, and we can't, give away the family secrets, and we can't do this or that. But I think you're a perfect example of opening your arms and sharing and giving and partnering. Look what can be created. You're creating a legacy from what you're doing, and to me, that's what's exciting.
And so many people have helped along the way. As you know, you're one of them, Steve. And then there's tons of people, and I do agree as a profession that we can do better. We can not be our own worst enemy. We think very closed-minded with that fixed mindset, and we draw lines in the sand, and we create this us and them when it's really all just we, right? Right. And it really is. I'm telling you, even when you think about what physical therapists do. For what? It depends on the stat. For what? Maybe 7% of people that actually need the help. Yeah. It's what we, and that's not talking about what we're going to be able to do on chronic disease, on quality of life. There's just so many areas, but it's too complex, Steve. None of us is going to solve it in the silo. So right. You're absolutely right. The more that we can share these ideas, share the information, set people up for success, because they've all got skills that they're going to be good at, and focus on strengths. It can be some really powerful things occur.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the thinking of the future, talking of the future? So what's next for your company and for you personally? Are you just still going forward, doing what you're doing, or you got some big idea going forward without giving away any secrets? What do you think the future looks like for your company and yourself?
I think our company, and my hope is that our company continues to grow in a structured, thoughtful, measured fashion, long after I'm gone, hopefully. And hopefully I got a long time left, hopefully. But so while I think of all the possibilities and ideas, and you do have to be right, death by opportunity can be a horrible way to die. At the end of the day, Steve, I really think that one of the things that's been most important for our team is that we live on what we call our 3 A's: ability, access, and atmosphere. And ability means be good at what you do. Access means make sure people can access you. And the atmosphere makes sure that you've got a healing, helpful, fun environment to do that in. I think that no matter how far down the road we get, those concepts of those three A's combined with empathy, perspective, balance, generosity, all those types of things, I think our company will do great. Where we've really stumbled is when we've tried to bite off more than we should, or when we haven't really heeded those values, those values of the three A's and just real simple context. So I think our company has just got the platform in place. I think that we've had some examples of success now. We have some stability as an organization, so I see nothing but upward opportunity, and I think it'll obviously be collaboratively, working with other people out there, other practices. I think we're going to see a lot of practices going, why are you using system A and me B when really C would be better, and we should all just use C together, and we're all going to save money, and it's going to work better. Yeah. We'll get there. It's just that path, that dance to get there. For my personality, that dance can be tough for me because I feel like I can see a simple path to get there, but as we both know, humans are never simple.
Oh, never simple. You just scratch your head like, I see it so clearly. Why can't anyone else see it? It can be really frustrating, right? But as you said, you've set up this business as a legacy business, which is amazing, and you've surrounded yourself with good people. I don't know all your people, but I know especially like Kelly Sanders, who's amazing. To be part of your group and just go forward, and that's what you need. You need the next generation and the next group of leaders, and always continuing growing those people so that they're able to handle what comes in the future.
Yeah, no, and the development of new leaders is probably one of the most exciting things. Ranks right up there with that hug from the patient. Is that handshake from someone that came, the one that was an aide, right, or the one that maybe came to you, bright-eyed high school student that had to write an essay, and they kind of just came to you because their dad knew you or something, and they write their essay, and then they come there and they go, wow, this is what you do every day. Really, it's just some really neat opportunities to watch people develop. And then, it's really selfish, but you learn so much from them. People say, thanks for teaching me so much and taking, thanks for standing up there and doing that lecture on whatever, or this or that. And I want to say, yeah, thanks for those great questions at the end and the dialogue, right? I mean, you learn so much by those interactions.
Absolutely. I mean, growing leaders, I would agree with you, is just such a great, fun thing to do. It's my passion as well. Hey, I want to just share a story with our listeners and get your take on it. So, that I'm a music lover, and we were talking one time. I think we're in Louisville, Kentucky one time, and I'd mentioned a band that I was really excited about, and you said, "Boy, that band sounds familiar." And then you went on your website and looked and said, "Oh yeah, that we had that band in my bar, a month or two ago," and we got to laughing at that. But so you actually owned a business, which was a kind of a bar music venue there in San Luis Obispo, and I know that it was fun at times and really hard at other times, and so I think it'd be interesting just to hear what you think you learned from that as you continue to grow your business and grow your practice from then.
Man, I'm glad you brought it up, man. I wasn't sure if that would fit here, but I'll tell you, always been entrepreneurial. Indeed, did own a music venue slash nightclub for some time, and have always really been I don't know if enamored or just, one of the few things that can really move me is music of all types. And so, I said I was entrepreneurial. The physical therapy was sort of something that came after a whole bunch of businesses during my undergrad years. I used to buy and sell. So my first real business was me and another buddy would buy and sell bikes at yard sales and swap meets in college, slap them back together, put some lubrication on the chain, spray paint them funny colors, and sell them for way better profit than I've ever made in the physical therapy world. We'd flip these bikes over and over. And I was in college, and this was this is going to be the late '80s, and so this was the round one of the craft brew, the home brew world. So being entrepreneurial, but also being value driven, we all started to figure out how to make beer. And so, we've sold these bikes, and then we bought beer brewing equipment, and then ultimately we ended up buying a whole brewery. And so when I was in Bakersfield, we owned a brewery, and it still exists. It's called Lengthwise Brewing Company. If anyone's ever in Bakersfield, they make fantastic beer. I ended up selling that to my partners, came over here and did the physical therapy business, and then was approached by Todd, who I'd mentioned earlier, about an opportunity to have an ownership in Slow Brewing Company. And so for some time, Todd ran that business. I had a sort of a silent partnership. I guess I just got to go to the concert.
Yeah,
and so,
that's the best part.
That's a tough business when you have young kids, though, because nothing occurs at normal times. And so, super fun, loved it, had a great time. And really that business evolved, ended up moving on from Slow Brew for a variety of personal and business reasons, stuck with Todd. And so we now have a production company called Good Medicine Presents. And Todd's still doing some production, and we actually have a pretty exciting project north of San Luis Obispo that Todd's working on in Paso Robles, where we've got an old Fox Theater that we're looking to do some retrofits to, and he's looking real seriously at the options for it. But one of them, and if I know Todd well, is potentially a music venue as well.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, if any PTs out there listening, you make it my way. Send me an email, and I'm happy to go out and enjoy some live music. Steve, as I recall, I think I introduced you to the Growlers before they were even popular.
That funky little band from Santa Barbara. I remember those guys, and I still got them on my playlist. So
and they're big now. They actually, there's some. My daughter. I have two daughters, 14. They're actually almost 15 and 16, and they call it surf goth. They love that. So we were there first, Steve.
We were there first. We were discovering it, and you and I were on the cutting edge. No question about that.
But you asked for the parallels. See, the parallels in any service business, I think are really the same. And for me, it's those 3 A's. It's if you're going to have a nightclub, if you're going to have a music venue, you've got to have good music, right? You've got to have good food, ability. You've got to have good beer. You have to have good access. People have to be able to buy tickets at a reasonable rate or at a rate they find valuable. And then the atmosphere has to be fun, right? I mean, people go out to be entertained. They want a fun atmosphere. So, I guess I'm a simpleton to a certain degree, but those 3 A's of ability, access, and atmosphere, I think they're really good barometers for any service-oriented business.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great values and just great rules for us all to think about. So, Jim, it's just been really great talking to you. Usually what we do on these is we kind of say, what's a pearl of wisdom that you can give our listeners as we depart here? So you got any pearls of wisdom relating to the leadership world?
The pearls of wisdom for leadership, Steve, I think we've gone over in detail before, but it's finding people smarter than you, right? It's finding the ones that care more than you do. It's getting them together. PTs love Jim Collins, so anything Jim said about getting them on the bus and in the right places, and then trying to get the dang bus started and then get it moving down the right direction. Yeah. It takes a lot of selflessness. It takes empathy. All those things that we use with our patients. It's always amazed me. If physical therapists would just think about their coworkers the way they think about their patients, I think they could be much better leaders, and they would create much better leaders. It's not that complicated. We just think it's different. So, I think it's just that value in that we can do more together than we can alone. Yeah,
great advice. Thanks, Jim. Boy, it's just going to be great talking to you. And I think, if any listener can't get passionate and excited by listening to Jim Glinn, I don't know what's going to get you going there. So thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate talking to you, and look forward to seeing you soon somewhere down the road. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. It's always a blast. I sure appreciate it. And like I said, if any of your listeners ever want to contact, we're at movementforlife.com, and look me up. My email's there. If you guys make it to the Central Coast, I always love to learn from my fellow colleagues.
Thanks again, Jim. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you for joining us today, and be sure to check our entire library of podcasts and videos at vgmadvantage.com. This has been a podcast for Profiles in Leadership.